This gets us into World War II. Hitler was an occultist. You didn't know this. Okay. Hitler was deep into the occult arts. He belonged to two giant occult organizations, the Thrill Society and the Real Society. The Reals was in contact with some people inside of the earth that had veil rods. Okay. And he was also in contact with some people from the star Aldebaran that he was getting secret information from. Okay. What's the star Aldebaran? It's the in the constellation Taurus is the eye of Taurus is the star Aldebaran. Okay. He was in contact with them, who we call today the Greys. But he didn't know they were the Greys. They lied to Hitler. They told him that they were an Aryan race. And in the late 1930s, you're going to find it shocking. The Germans sent a ship over there. They gave him the technology to visit them. They tried several attempts. It wasn't until near the end of the war that they were successful, because they was looking for a place to go because they was losing the war. And that's when they found out the truth, when one of their ships finally made it there. And a message was sent back. No one is human here. Okay. That's when the secret came out. Lynn, what did that have to do with the Black Eyed Kids? Now, Hitler was into the occult. He knew that mankind was going to be replaced. That's why Hitler was into what is called the swastika. The swastika is not a Nazi symbol. It is a Hindu symbol. The swastika is the wheel of time. There's the left-handed swastika and the right-handed swastika. The left-handed swastika it means God controls the wheel of time. The right-handed swastika, which the Nazis took up as their symbol, they interpret that as man-controlled time. And since Hitler knew through the occult books that the human race was going to be replaced, he was going to be the one who was going to turn the wheel of time, and he was going to bring about the new race, which he referred to as the new Aryan race. Okay. But those other people were still working on the other side. And it took them an extremely long period of time. And we knew nothing about this project. A lot of people thought it was just fantasy. We kept hearing that they was working on our replacements. We wasn't sure until in the 1950s and early 60s, people started talking about seeing babies in jars. And these babies in jars looked at human, but not quite human. Then they started saying babies in like containers that was bigger than babies. You're getting into the late 60s, early 70s. Then people started talking about how they were seeing, along with these aliens, they saw these aliens with bad hair. And these aliens looked at like aliens, but they didn't look exactly like aliens. They looked at like half human, half alien with bad hair. Do you understand what I'm talking about? They didn't finish with their beta testing these things until they became widely on the scene in the 80s and 90s, where the black eyed kids emerged in large numbers. The project was complete. Our replacements was done. The black eyed kids was designed to replace us. They was created by the Greys. They was brilliant. They could communicate with their minds. Their eyes was black, just like their alien friends. They could communicate without thinking. They could stare into your eyes and hypnotize you. Okay. They tried to make them, since they was going to interact with us, and the aliens was already abducting people, they tried to use them as a friendlier way of abducting people. And they tried to make them where they was distinguished, where we couldn't distinguish us from them besides for the eyes. Boy, that didn't work. Because, and there's a lot of pictures of people seeing these kids around that time in the late 80s, the early 90s, up into the turn of the, around the 2000s. People was seeing these kids. And these kids, even though they were supposed to be human, people knew that they were strange because they had no facial expression. They never really talked. They would stare at you and you could feel like they could read your mind. And they would come up to you in your car and say, I need to get in your car. They would knock on your door and you open the door and there's this kid with no expression, no feeling, no emotion saying, I need to come into your house. Can I come into your house? Most people slam the door on them. Most people are very nice to kids. It was something about these kids. Nobody had nothing to do with them. The only reports we have is people that said no and drove off and slammed the door and whatever. We have no reports from the people who let the kids in. Because once they got into your house or your car, game over, man, because once they got you, with their eyes, they could hypnotize you and you didn't remember anything. So we have no reports. And this went on for basically 10, 20 years. We have no reports. There's lots of reports of people seeing these kids asking for rides, these kids asking to get in your car, these kids knocking on your door, wanting to come in your house. We only have reports of people saying no. And when they would slam the door and come back, the kid would be gone. And sometimes there would be 2 or 3 of them. But they all described the kids the same. No expression at all. It's like and when they looked at you, instead of you saying, oh, there's a kid at the door, this was like, I don't know what this is, but this is definitely not a kid. It looks like a kid, but it's definitely not one. And I'm definitely not letting this in my house. But how many of these things was let in? And the people that let them in, there's no reports. Because once they got finished with you, you had no memory of what happened. So, what did they do if you let them in the house? We don't know. Did they come in your house and you and them sat and watched Netflix together, or did they come in your house? Or we have no records. We only have records of people who refuse to let them in. This is what is so scary.